Hi, welcome back to twitch.tv/AWS live from reInvent. We're back.
So we're going to take this next 20, 25 minutes or so, and what we're going to do is we're going to walk through some of our favorite announcements from 2017. We've done maybe 1,000 features at least so far in 2017, and like
we are not going to read all of them. So.
Well, I was told that I was not allowed to read all of them.
You were told you were not allowed to get Polly to read all of them.
So what I want to do is I want to start by talking about some of the major services that we've launched in 2017. So Amazon Lex, which was announced at reInvent last year, became generally available. We launched Chime, which is a communication platform. We also launched AWS Glue. We launched a whole suite of tools around call centers called Connect. And I can talk about any of those at length. I can even demonstrate them if you guys are interested. But what are you guys most excited about from this year?
Do you want to go first, or shall I go first?
Well, I'm going to go first for something that was really small. So I have a couple things, and I always feel like I get up here and I did like at Web Summits, everyone was like, "Oh God, is this woman going to stop talking about ports like at any point in this conversation?" So I would just like to shout out that I liked being able to create a new default VPC. That it was one of the smallest and most annoying things. That once I had a VPC, a default one, there's nothing I could do about it, but it makes a lot of things easier when you use the default.
So
I really like that.
In particular, that's a new command line tool where you can go AWS CLI. Or say AWS VPC, create new default VPC, which if you, like me, were a customer previously, prior to getting your AWS account, you could have gone and deleted your default VPCs because you wanted to like lock down a region or something, and now that you're putting up infrastructure publicly again, it kind of stinks to not have it. So that was also one of my favorite.
You can get them back with a support ticket, but who wants to be that person that has to raise a support ticket?
You could also create
it manually. I deleted this in a fit of rage, and now I can't get it back. Can you please help me?
Ian, how about you? What's
well, if we're talking about quality of life improvements for developers, there's a couple that really jump out to me as being minor feature launches, but were incredibly popular with customers. One of them is the security group rules descriptions that were added, where it became possible to annotate individual rules in a security group. And that was a minor feature, but when it was posted on my Twitter went absolutely crazy. This is one of the best things. And then the second was we added some visualizations inside the S3 console to do with the policies on buckets. So your public buckets would be visually highlighted whenever you went in the console. Again, it's like a minor tweak, but it's just really good for auditing. And the same thing with some of the visual cues around IAM. So if you had a non-best practice configured IAM password policy, or you hadn't rotated your access keys for a long time, again, you'd get a yellow warning triangle inside the IAM console. Those are just really nice incremental features that just make people safer and better at operations, which I really liked. They're not big feature launches, but
I mean, I like them, but I also find them Randall, you haven't rotated your keys in 700 days.
Don't judge me.
It's helpful nagging for quality of life. Yeah, I like those features.
I do really like, though, in general, the quality of life improvements, like just the little things.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about security group rules, and
so
it's amazing.
For RDS this year, we launched newer, larger instances, so we can go to 16 terabytes on all of the engines now.
Yeah.
We launched Aurora with Postgres just earlier last month. We put in auto-scaling read replicas, which is you only get as many read replicas as you need to match your traffic. We doubled the maximum write throughput capacity on the same instance type, which was pretty impressive. And then some other really cool advances in Aurora. There's a really interesting blog post about this from Anurag Gupta, who's I think the VP of Aurora here at AWS, where DDL, which are the data definition language, you can enable fast DDL on these columns. A lot of operations, a lot of I/O.
It's just moving into metadata changes. So
exactly, and because of the way the Aurora engine is structured, the storage is separate from the compute, so it's able to perform those operations much faster. It's really interesting. We talk exactly about how we wrote that architecture. So if you like that, there's a really good blog post on it. And then there's also fast database cloning with RDS now. So it used to take a couple minutes to get a clone, and now it's drastically faster.
Yep.
Also, per second billing.
Oh yeah,
on the
per
compute
second billing
side,
is huge.
Which I was like, are we not gonna say that one? So that was, I guess, not like a. It's in the. I think it's in the category of not a service announcement, but more like a just like a. Like bigger.
A structural
it's
sort
a
of
big
billing structural change.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a big change.
That was a good description.
Well, I also think it enables new workloads, right? Because if you think about continuous integration, so we had code build,
Yeah.
and code build was build per minute,
Yep.
which was an enhancement over EC2. So let's say you had Jenkins running. You could have Jenkins up running. It could start new instances. It could use the spot market. It could do whatever it needed to do to get one of these instances, but you still paid for the full minute or the full hour that it was running. And if your job only takes 2 minutes to run, you don't want to pay for a full hour. And by kind of transforming into this per second model, and per second may not be a huge win for a ton of workloads, but moving to better billing granularity is
that's only a good
huge
thing,
win.
right? Every customer's going to see their
Only
price
pay
go
for
down.
what you use. It's closer to it's probably like true like resource-based pricing. Like I'm only paying for exactly what I use, and I think my favorite part is that so we've had per second billing for a while now, and my favorite is seeing all the people that are now coming out with the blog posts being like we aggressively auto scale like now for like a whole new level of aggressive. When they're like, because if you don't need it for that long, then
Take it away and save money. It's also better for the environment, right? Because you're not using those cycles, you're not using that energy. So I'm a fan of that. I think it's a great change. Yeah, really good.
So what else kind of, there was Chime this year. We used Chime a lot internally, and there's some really cool enhancements in Chime, particularly, and I know you guys are probably very tired of this. They launched webhooks for Chime, which I had a field day with when it came out.
Never joined a Chime channel with Randall. He's like, oh guys, there's webhooks, and it's like, we know because you've been testing all of your webhooks in our group chat all week.
So having webhooks in Chime is pretty interesting. It kind of, it lets you send messages to the channel. For instance, I could have every tweet that I make go directly into the AWS Evangelist channel, and I feel like that would be of a great benefit to our entire team.
I'm thinking CloudWatch alarms, maybe. Might be a better use case. But,
is there a CloudWatch alarm category for like Randall testing stuff? It's like, please let me know, and then also kick me off of Chime, just for a little bit.
There was also Glue. So I wrote the blog post for Glue, and we announced Glue at reInvent, but it didn't go GA until this year.
New York Summit, it went GA, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's honestly one of my favorite services. It's kind of, if I were to describe it, I would say it's ETL, which is extract, transform, and load, by developers for developers. It's not meant to be Tableau or one of these tools that you drag and drop things. It's for jobs where you need code to transform the data. Maybe you need to pull resources from different places. Maybe you need to make requests. And I really love that because it's super powerful, and you can have it crawl incoming data sets. So I play this video game called Heroes of the Storm, which I'm sure a lot of people on Twitch play. So what I did is I exported all of my replay data from Heroes of the Storm. I put it into Glue, and then I was able to transform it, and then I was able to load it into Amazon Machine Learning directly from Glue, and I was able to say, hey, I have this game coming up that I'm about to play. Is it likely that I'm going to win? And it would always tell me no, but it was really cool. It was just like,
that's machine learning.
I didn't have to work hard to do that. It wasn't like a multi-day affair, which previously I think it would have been, because all of that stuff was kind of taken care of for me. So now every time I finish a game of Heroes of the Storm, it uploads that replay, parses the CSV, puts it into that data set for Amazon ML, and restarts the model load. So really powerful
It doesn't
stuff.
make you any better at Heroes of the Storm, though.
No, but I get better at coding at least.
Is there machine learning for that? Please teach me how to be better at Heroes of the Storm.
We launched FIFO queues, first in, first out queues for SQS, which is a huge win for people who I think were not already on SQS. Because I think if you were already on SQS, you would kind of built your infrastructure in a way that you didn't depend on first in, first out anymore. You kind of had this item potency built in. But now I think if you're coming to SQS as a new customer, it's pretty powerful. What else? I mean, I have thousands of things that I could talk about, but
I have only 4 things on my list. So the 4 things that I put down last night when I was thinking about this were the AWS X-Ray SDK for Python, which we launched in August. So this was still in beta, instrumentation for Python apps running in, well, I use it mostly in Lambda, but you can also use it in Elastic Beanstalk. just import the SDK, patch your Ubuntu libraries, and instrument your Python serverless apps. It's really cool. I'm using it with some backends for Lex, and I really like it. You can start and end custom timers to help you monitor and track performance of third-party APIs, which is pretty cool. I really like that. And also, I like the i3 instances. So,
with the NVMe
yeah,
SSD
as gamers,
storage.
we've all got our NVMe SSDs at home, which we've had for quite a while, and those are available now in the high-performance IO-centric instances that we have.
Those connect over like a PCIe bus. It's
Yeah,
just
there's
like
no
it's like a
SATA stack in play, so not only is the throughput really high, the latency is an order of magnitude lower. So instead of milliseconds, it's microsecond access.
One thing that slightly confused me about those is the access pattern. It's not the standard /dev/SDA1 or whatever. It's like a different device path in order to access those. I don't remember what it is, but it's like it took me a second to grok that.
Yep.
Like mounting them was
A little bit different, yeah.
But man, they're wicked fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to work for a high-end storage vendor before I came here, and when you see the I/O numbers on those new instances, they were as big as the biggest enterprise storage array you could buy before, just inside one system, which is absolutely mind-blowing.
Some cool stuff for Spot too. And
Oh, yeah.
that's actually consistently, so I like that this is my architecture episodes where people are talking about kind of all the cool things that they've built with Spot Fleet. So some new stuff with Spot. So you can auto-attach instances to your load balancers now, and you can scale all the way down to 0 for that load balancer. And then you can use Spot to start and stop the instances now as well. So some cool stuff around Spot, which people are using to kind of get the most out of their infrastructure.
If we're talking about like core infrastructure advances, I mean, there was IPv6 launched.
Oh yeah, that's true.
There was there were G3 instances, P3 instances, C5 instances. Spot Fleet, you could kind of scale down now. Like you could auto-attach the instances into your load balancers, like you said, and then you could also scale down to 0. So
Yes.
if you had no traffic, you weren't being charged. You could start and stop the Spot instances. That was useful.
There's a question in the stream chat there about the cost difference between Lambda and EC2-based workloads, kind of related to new services.
Yeah,
so.
I actually have a presentation on this that I gave. If you Google like Randall Hunt PyCon Web, I walked through taking a typical web service, like a 3-tier web app, and running it on EC2 and RDS and stuff versus running it on Lambda and DynamoDB. And the real answer is it depends. And I know that's not a great answer, but typically for thousands of requests per second kind of workloads where you have a smaller number of invocations, you will see better cost performance with Lambda. Once you get to a very large number of requests, the cost does change, and it kind of moves more towards the containerization or EC2 side of things as you get that density of requests coming in. And the easiest thing to do is to just measure it. All the prices are public, so you can just do a little bit of math, sit down, and figure it out.
So I think we give the answer like it depends on your workload a lot, but like there's like a reason that's everyone's answer. there's actually like a really good reason why people say that all the time. So if I break my architecture around so that I can scale really flexibly with containers, then that makes a lot of sense. But if I didn't really break anything apart, if it's just the same as like my previous EC2 app, then maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense for me. And the same with Lambda versus EC2, right? That if you change your infrastructure to work better, if you have a use case where that really helps you, then so it really does depend for a reason though.
So somebody in the Twitch channel asked any advice on chaining Lambda functions, architecture advice, and I think this is where step functions come in.
Yeah.
Step functions are really, really powerful, and they've gotten more powerful over the past few weeks. What a step function is, it's a JSON definition of a state machine. And there's actually a standard spec that this implements, which I had no idea that it was a standard spec until I went and I was asking why this interface wasn't working the way I wanted it to. But you can go and you can run these step functions, and you can say, hey, I want to wait for manual input, or I want to wait X seconds. I want to have exponential backoff.
Yep.
I want to have all of these different jobs to try and like chain these Lambda functions together. I have a state function or I have a step function, sorry, for, sorry, Ian, responding to requests from my boss.
I think if anyone has ever interacted with Randall, the chances are you're interacting with one of his small army of Lambda functions. It's never actually this actually may or may not be the real Randall Hunt right now, but he did also attend our offsite meeting, not in person. So maybe he's real, maybe he's not.
It's really cool and fun. I mean, talking around serverless, there have been a tremendous number of announcements this year that have enabled serverless. My favorite, of course, is that Lambda supports Python 3 now. Python 3 is just better. I'm sure there are great languages out there, but no, Python 3 is the best.
Randall doesn't care about any of them.
Objectively. So we also have X-Ray is generally available now, which makes monitoring not just Lambda functions, but also like whole swaths of architecture pretty easy. There's this company called Skyscanner out of Edinburgh, Scotland, right?
Yeah.
And they use X-Ray pretty interestingly. They actually found a bug in production and were able to kind of debug it on stage. It was really cool to see, why isn't this cache being set? And they look and they say, or sorry, why is this cache returning so slowly? And then they go, oh, we forgot to call set cache. And
seeing people's service maps with X-Ray are actually really cool, because you can get right down to like the response time of a call and be like, wow, actually it took a long time, and then you can trace it all the way back and figure out what was making it be so slow. So kind of all the beyond like when I think a really common question is, but why is this slow? And X-Ray is the answer to why is this slow. Go and discover.
We also kind of really improved the ability so Lambda at Edge, first of all, it went generally available this year, but then not only did it go generally available. Are we short on time? Oh, sorry. Not only did it go generally available, just recently, right before this happened, this event, we launched Lambda at Edge enhancements that allowed you to dynamically select your origin, to respond to network calls and generate content that takes maybe 30 seconds instead of having that 1 second limitation. Yep. Your functions can be as big as 1.5 gigs. Your function memory usage can be as large as 1.5 gigs. The function itself is 50 megs. It's really, really powerful, and you can actually host like whole apps at an edge location now. And I have been playing with that instead of doing my real job. And I just can't stop playing with it because it just enables all of these like new kind of fun architectures. Like if you wanted to build a Twitter bot, you no longer have to use an AWS
hypothetically
region.
If you wanted to build a Twitter bot. You have so many bots.
And then X-Ray, it integrates with Lambda. That was another kind of monitoring kind of enhancement.
So easily as well.
Just
yeah.
2 lines of code.
or click in the console, enable active tracing.
Yeah, it's great.
Cognito launched a couple of enhancements. The ability to host a sign-in page without you having to do anything was really cool. So previously, I've used Cognito before in the past. If you guys watch the Twitch Plays AWS console episode, we used Cognito to build that. And if you remember, I had to make this S3 static web page in order for people to sign in and stuff. But now you don't have to do that. Cognito will just host it for you, and they'll give you like a custom domain to do it too. So pretty powerful enhancement there, kind of removing a lot of the undifferentiated heavy lifting of hosting those sort of apps.
This is totally random and out of order now, but we talked about IAM earlier, and you can now attach the roles to the existing instances instead of having to either stop or start
that
a
was
new
such
one.
a huge win.
I'm all about apparently not feature
life.
announcements, but quality of life improvements.
Yep.
So just here to be the quality of life police, but so many cool things that are like that I would have had to stop and start an instance before or start a completely new one, and now I don't have to stop whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, I like that.
We just launched OpsWorks. We now support Puppet Enterprise. I wrote the blog post for that. It's cool. I was actually at PuppetConf last year, and people were asking for that kind of integration, so it's great that we were able to deliver that for people.
Also, Route 53 returns multiple entries now.
So useful. There were some other Route 53 enhancements too around monitoring and also service rate limits. So there was this company actually at ChefConf in 2017, and they modified the Fog Ruby gem to have exponential backoff for Route 53 because they had lots of customers, and what they were trying to do is they were trying to list out all the domains for each one of their customers because it was a subdomain per customer. And Route 53 has this rate limit. I think it's a couple hundred requests per second, and you have to open a support ticket if you want more than that. But rather than going through all of that, they just built this kind of exponential backoff into it. And once they were able to monitor their limits rather than having to guess at it with an API, they were able to complete that same workload of iterating through thousands and thousands and thousands of subdomains. They were able to complete that same workload in like seconds, or minutes rather than hours that it took before.
DNS too is like one of the things that you're like, well, What features could there be with DNS this year? I think it's been working the same for a while.
I mean, along the same lines.
ACM, they changed the ACM
Exactly.
approval workflow to be automatically integrated with Route 53 now. So when you request a new certificate, your Route 53 domains get the authorization token automatically inserted into them.
I will talk
So you
about
don't have that
certificate
email
manager until
step
I
anymore?
die.
That's nice.
Also,
Well, certificate managing is really, really, really frustrating. If anyone that's watching that used to work in ops or DevOps or IT, there was like a day where you'd be like, well, why doesn't this work anymore? The answer is always your SSL certificate.
Yep.
And you're like, what a great day. And then you're like sitting there looking up the Java commands for how to get the new SSL certificates.
OpenSSL-new cert-X11 509.
You never get any credit when you remember to do that, but you always get in trouble when you forget.
No one's ever impressed. I'm like, well, I remembered half of this OpenSSL command today, and they're like, the website doesn't work.
The only way that I remember my SSL, my OpenSSL invocations is Control-R in my terminal, because I know that I typed it within the past year, and I just keep every command that I've ever run. So I just type Control-R, and then I type OpenSSL, and I just press R over and over and over again until I find the right command.
Pro advice.
There's another kind of huge enhancement for API Gateway that I really liked, which was the ability to have multi-region deployments. So rather than, or multi-region endpoints. So previously, if you wanted to have a custom domain with API Gateway, you had to get your certificate in US East 1. And then you had to point, that CloudFront distribution that fronts the API Gateway at US East 1. Whereas now, you can have a deployment in any region that API Gateway is in, which is pretty powerful. And it also builds on the multi-region architecture of serverless, which is something that we are continuing to invest in and make better. And it gives you more resiliency in the event of some sort of disaster. There's just a ton of stuff. SSM, so Simple Systems Manager or EC2 Systems Manager is what it's called in the console, but the API invocation is called Simple Systems Manager, SSM. If you go AWS SSM parameter store, there's a guy named Chris Munns who's a solutions architect here at AWS. Or sorry, he's actually the developer advocate for serverless now. He taught me about SSM parameter store, and that's the way that I keep all of my API keys for my apps now. So for Twitter, for Slack, for all of these different APIs that I interact with on a day-to-day basis, I just keep all of those API keys in SSM encrypted. And then when I want to pull them down in a Lambda function, it's just SSM pull this. But the advantage now is that they're namespaced.
You can tag them.
You can tag them, their namespace. There's the ability to kind of drill down hierarchically. Oh, I want the dev API key. I want the prod API key. And the console looks a little bit fancier, too.
Which is the way that we often recommend people store secrets for things like ECS. Like instead of just doing them in like the Docker
rather
container
than like
where they're plain
environments.
text, then you can store them in parameter store, and then you can pull your keys. And just like that, you can use the namespace also, so your container can pull
you need deny IAM to do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Just the P3 instances. I'm sorry again about my AWS bill. Ian approves my AWS bill, so I've been working really hard on some machine learning stuff lately, and it's just really interesting. And these P3 instances, they use these these Tesla GPUs, and they are ridiculously powerful. Like we're talking hundreds of teraflops of power. And I've been playing around with those and training some networks, and it's like I got a 14x improvement on one of my workloads over using a C3 or whatever, a C4, and it was just amazing. There's just like a ton of stuff. We as far as data sets go, we launched the usaspending.gov data set on our public data sets page. We also put the NASA GOES weather data on the public data sets page. If you guys are interested in climate data, the NCDC, the National Climatic Data Center, has a huge swath of data that's like really interesting. You can do all kinds of analysis on it, and being able to pull that into RDS easily or pull that into EMR or Redshift easily is a pretty powerful component. And then, there were some enhancements in Lex too. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place.
Well, we also didn't say that Lex is generally available this year.
We did.
Did we say that?
Yeah.
I thought we mentioned all the other things that used Lex, but never that it was generally.
It's also GA in Ireland now as well with the regional expansion to a second region. Yeah, I really like that service. It's really great.
one of the cool things, so we launched Connect, which is this like call center as a service kind of deal. And it's more than that, but if you were to describe it in just a few words, that's how I would say it. And Lex is the ability to have that automated assistant. You know, you call up a company and you're like, hey, I would like to talk to a representative. You can have your Lex bot kind of hold that conversation for you. Or you call up the company, you know, you can have a Lambda function that goes, looks up the number, and then the Lexbot prompts for some sort of security thing. Lexbot says, okay, you're authenticated. Let me propagate this agent's UI so that they can see all the stuff that's in there and what's related to your account. But one of the problems that we had when we initially launched this is that the word error rate in Lex was higher than we expected. And the reason for this is that if you think about the way you send audio over the internet, like with Alexa, you are sending typically 16 kilohertz or higher audio content, whereas over the phone, they use a lot of compression algorithms. Because if you ever listen to like the Apollo 11 moon landing recordings, you can understand what they're saying, but the audio quality is very, very poor.
Yep. Yep.
So with 8 kilohertz audio, you know, a human can understand it, but the model that we had trained did not. So what we did is we retrained that model with some 8 kilohertz samples, and we were able to get an order of magnitude improvement in our word error rate there. And so that made Lex much better for Connect and other kind of telephony applications.
Yeah.
I can keep going. There's so many announcements from this year. But I figured I'd let somebody else talk for a little bit.
I think we're out of time, are we? It must be almost at the top of the segment.
Are we out of time, Gina?
Are we out of time? Yeah.
Yeah. I think
are.
we've got some other people going. So there's one other thing that I want to say before we go. Like, I'm just going to go through these two things really quickly. We launched DAX, which is DynamoDB Accelerator. Very, very powerful. You can take
He's speaking at an accelerated speed to announce this also.
you can launch a DynamoDB cluster, and you typically get like millisecond latency, but now you can get single digit millisecond or even sub-millisecond latency when you're making these calls. We also launched a bunch of things around Spotfleet and F1 instances. So F1 instances are FPGA instances. Yeah. EBS store can now like change online while it's attached to your instance. And we also launched a cryptography CLI for the AWS encryption SDK.
We also talked about machine learning, but didn't mention AMIs or.
Yeah,
and
the deep learning AMIs.
We talked in a previous section about using recognition in the tech stuff.
Yeah,
we didn't
really
talk
cool.
about that in this.
That just launched.
Text detection just launched, yeah.
Also interfaces. Okay, and the backend is much faster, so you get your response faster than you did before.
Yep.
All right, thank you guys so much. We've got another section coming up.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon.